Freya Vajra, welcome to the Hey Sunshine podcast.
Thank you for having me, Shani.
I am so excited you're here. We've just been having a few laughs before getting on the recording today. And I just want to say I'm the biggest fan of your work, and I worked with you for 2 months at the end of last year, and I've sung your praises to everyone who would listen. I just think you're amazing, and you have such integrity in the work that you do. And I knew as soon as I heard you on a podcast, however many months back, I was like, I need to get you on the podcast. So welcome.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here, and I feel like it's weird to say this on a podcast, but it was also such a pleasure to work with you as well. So, so it's really nice to be here.
And it feels like full circle. It's like, like you were mentoring me, and then now I get to interview you. So yeah, it feels super special.
You get to ask all the questions.
Yeah, I know.
I'm in the hot seat.
Yeah, you're definitely in the hot seat. So this is obviously the Hey Lover mini series. So all about giving people the confidence, the tools, and the skills to enter into love and really call in their person. So today, for anyone who's listening, we are diving into all things spiritual bypassing, gaslighting, healthy and unhealthy relationships, and really like how to call in the healthiest, most beautiful relationship that you deserve. How does that sound?
It sounds so good. You sound so professional. I love it.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
If you could see me just in my housemate's like bedroom, like with a full like books under my laptop. It's a very unprofessional setup, but anyway.
No. You've got the energy, the vivaciousness.
That's all that matters. People don't see it; they just hear it.
Enthusiasm. I know this is sidetracking. One of my good friends told me once. They were like, "Do you understand, or do you know the root of the word enthusiasm?" And I was like, "No." And he was like, ENN and thu. It's Greek origin, and it means with God. So when we are enthusiastic, we are with God, whatever you want to call God.
Spirit, source, flow. I do feel whenever I podcast, I just get into flow, and that's just my favorite state to be in. I love that. Okay, I'm going to put that in a mental bank. It'll come out in another podcast one time. So, Freya, I like to start these Hey Lover mini-series with a rapid-fire speed dating. So are you ready?
I'm ready for it.
Okay. What is your human design?
I am a 3-5 generator.
Oh, a 3-5. I love the 3-5. That's me too.
Yes, we're the
life
crazy
experimenters.
Yeah, exactly. Bad scientists.
What is your love language?
My top 2 equal love languages are quality time and physical touch.
Nice. And your attachment style?
Oh God, it depends on which.
Me too, right?
I think with my current partner, it's kind of evolving into secure attachment, which is like strange and new and very, very nice. But I've definitely experienced being both, being on the anxious end and being on the avoidant end. I think historically I've been more anxious, and than with maybe some people who were not very good for me. I don't think that was avoidant. I think that was more my system saying, get away.
Leave me alone.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. And so what would be one word to describe your old love life?
Chaos.
Yeah. I love hearing that. Everyone's always like, oh, tumultuous, chaotic. And what about your current love life or your current relationship?
Calm. Secure, peaceful, funny. I'm using more than one word.
It's so fine. So hopefully they listen in, so then we can get that praise.
He gets lots of praise.
That's good. And what do you wish more people spoke about?
I don't know if I have an answer for that. I feel like especially with the internet, there are just so many voices talking about so many different things.
Maybe people speak less.
Yeah. Who would I like to shut up?
Yeah. I feel like knowing you, I'm like, there's definitely a few people that I could pick out, not publicly.
Yeah, no, let's not name names. I think something that I don't know if I want more people to speak about it, but something that's kind of on my mind at the moment is perhaps the way that, and I don't think it's necessarily the most important thing, but it's just the thing that's present that I'm thinking about right now myself, is how, and I want to preface this by saying that I've spent like over a decade in like the feminine embodiment world and the neo-tantra world and all of that stuff. So a lot of it can be so beautiful and devotional and magical and all of those things. But I think within like the feminine embodiment world, there's also like a lot of delusion and emotional chaos. And I think that what gets coached as emotional expression is often kind of actually emotionally dysregulated for a lot of people. And for people who already might be emotionally dysregulated, it can be more harmful for them. It might feel really good in the moment because it takes you into those big peak states, and that might feel really nice in the moment. But then it can train people into being really dysregulated in their emotions, and then that can dysregulate their life. And I think that seems to be, I just know I know some really beautiful teachers in that feminine embodiment world who have kind of like journeyed through the cycles of maturity with it. But yeah, I don't see that really spoken about a lot. And I think it would be helpful for people who go to those worlds, particularly because I think a lot of the people who go to those worlds already have a lot of trauma. And so, yeah. So it can feel really helpful to begin with because maybe those people haven't been able to express their voice before, but then at some point it can kind of tip and become actually really dysregulating. So,
I heard a quote yesterday: it works until it doesn't work. And then you have to find another path.
And that's true. That's just true. Yeah.
So closing, a red flag and a green flag.
A red flag, someone who, I'm going to say two things, someone who is unable to apologize for the behavior, and tied in with that, someone who maybe verbally apologizes but does not change their behavior. Massive red flag. A green flag is the opposite of that, someone who is able to be self-reflective, understand about their impact on other people, who's desirous to repair when there is disruption in the relationship or when they've hurt the other person, and is able to change their behavior rapidly. Like, you don't have to say to them 5 times. It's like on the first time they're like, oh shit, they're like, I don't want to hurt you, I love you, let me change my behavior. That's a really great green flag.
Definitely
green flag.
I like it.
I'll just say to all the listeners that I have a cold, so I'm a bit sniffly and my brain is not functioning at 100% right now. So
totally fine. You still sound amazing and you're dropping the bombs, so it's good. But yes, if we stop for a sniffle, that's so fine. All good. So I thought, Freya, we could start back somewhere at the beginning. So if you want to tell the listeners a little snippet of what you do, and also kind of like your journey, which is so hard to summarize, but in the best way possible, how you got here today.
Okay, so I am a trauma therapist, a somatic coach, and a trauma-informed educator. I work one-to-one with people, I run groups, and I have a couple of different online courses that, just help. My focus is working with people who've been through sexual violence of some kind, narcissistic abuse, domestic violence, or spiritual abuse. And there are a lot of people who fit into all of those categories. People who, maybe are a part of New Age communities or, those kinds of things. Unfortunately, lots of people fit into all of those categories. So my focus is working with them and helping people heal, recognize patterns, move beyond them, that kind of thing. And so that's what I do. And how I got here was a long journey.
Well, you've been on this path. I think I read on your website, like, you've been on this path really in the spiritual world since you're like 9 years old, trying to astral project.
Well,
If that doesn't
yeah.
sum it up,
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I was very dedicated.
Mm.
I'm not sure I ever astral projected. I've definitely had some
You
wild.
tried.
I did
Yeah.
definitely try. But yeah, I guess I've always been a really spiritual being, like,
Mm.
and I used to pray to God to make me a witch, and
Yeah.
it
Love that.
happened. Don't know if God made me a witch or I made me a witch, but
Mm.
maybe I was inherently a witch. Anyway, what does that even mean? There will be some practicing witches who are offended by my
Mhm.
statement right there. But anyway, whatever. Moving along.
Yeah.
So had very deep interest in spirituality from a very young age. Started yoga when started trying to do spells when I was 9.
Mm.
Started practicing yoga at 14. By 18, had started studying Reiki and Seikim and shamanic healing and those things. And by 24, I had studied with a lot of dedication at different yoga schools, and had traveled through India and developed a really solid spiritual practice where I would meditate anything from 1 to 4 hours every day for over a
Mm.
decade. I was very consistent with that up until lockdowns, and now I'm getting
Yeah.
my momentum back again. So I really started the journey with like spirituality, and I think that I was really seeking healing for a lot of my own issues, and as well as being passionate about spirituality.
Mm.
And then from there, I went into the coaching world and the neo tantra world, so sexual tantra, and started exploring those things to get freedom with inner freedom, and to also work through my own sexual dysfunction and things like that.
Mm.
Anyway, along that journey, and I'd been teaching internationally, traveling around the world, teaching all over the place.
Mm.
And along the way, I had a massive eruption of my own trauma, realized that I had been involved in a cult, in like a coaching cult, and realized that a lot of my relationships were built on toxic dynamics that mirrored my trauma as a kid. And I really had to examine how kind of delusional I had been, really, and some of the beliefs that I'd adopted. And the thing that really helped me crack through that delusion was the trauma that arose, and also the psychologically abusive relationship that I was in. And I really had to examine, like, how could I land in this place, where
Mm.
there are all these dynamics going on. Clearly, there's an issue with me. It's like I am at the center
Yeah.
of all
That's
of these things.
That's, massive accountability. But we don't know what we don't know. Like
Exactly.
you probably you weren't aware at the time where
I wasn't aware, and I was having a really great time, not realizing that
yeah.
the things that I was seeking to heal were actually reinforcing my own trauma in certain ways.
Mm.
But I felt really good. I felt like I had belonging. I felt like I was understood and seen, until I really wasn't. And at that point, I went through a very deep journey of my own trauma healing with using trauma therapies, and realized that in my coaching practice, there was just a lot I didn't know. And I thought that, when I was trained in my coaching certificate, we were told that we were being given the tools to work with people's trauma. And I
Mm.
now know that those modalities and those worlds are not trauma informed at all. And so using that language is quite problematic. And so I had to be like, okay, well, I'm being irresponsible with the position that I am in, and I need to educate myself. So I went back to university, started studying psychology, went and studied trauma therapy, studied somatic therapies and trauma-informed modalities, and learned what trauma-informed actually means. And started integrating that into my work. And my work really pivoted from being very focused on like the feminine embodiment stuff, like I mentioned earlier, and coaching, to being more trauma-informed education and trauma therapy for people who've been through those experiences also. So it was a very long, involved, deep journey, and very humbling to be where I am. But I'm really at this point, and I think it's really important not to try and rush this feeling, because you've mentioned already spiritual bypass, and I think it's very easy to try to spiritually bypass the tremendous pain of healing trauma. So at any earlier point, I may not have been able to say this and it be authentic, but at this stage, I feel really grateful, for the things that I've been through, because it's really there's this meme that I love, and it's got written on it, some things will break your heart but fix your vision. And I feel like that happened to me, and you know, I've been able to like also heal my heart, you know, and come to deeper places of healing. And I feel now that the work that I'm doing now feels very meaningful. And you know, I think this is a very deep wound, like we were speaking earlier before you hit record, about how 1 in 3 women have been through some kind of sexual violence, you know. So this is a very deep wound for everyone, not just women. And so being able to work in this area for me feels really rewarding and real. And I just feel really grateful for what my healing has given me, you know.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm like, that is so 3-5 of you. Like, you know, you go through it, we go through it firsthand, and then we can, you know, teach on it or help others on it. So yeah, I don't know if excited is the word, but I could not be more honored to be here with you today and just to pick your brain on this. Like, you're the exact person for this that we need to be interviewing.
I feel very warmed hearing that. And also,
so
like, what's your human design? You're 3-5.
3-5 projector.
I knew you were a projector.
Yeah, I knew it. It makes so much sense. I'm like the guider of, like, you know, the energy and all the things. So, but yeah, I love 3. I love being a 3-5, and I love 3-5s because I get them. You know, we get each other.
We're a bit different.
We totally are. Crazy but different.
Yes.
So, like, with all your background and your experience firsthand, you know, going through psychological abuse, like, what were like the themes that you're either seeing in like your clients coming through, or even that you went through yourself in dating and love? Like a surrounding like narcissistic, like, you know, a psychological abuse, that sort of area.
What are the main? Do you mean like what are the main giveaways?
Well, the main like issues that you're seeing in your clients coming through, like, you know, whether they're in long-term relationships, and or maybe like the traits. Maybe that's a better way of putting it.
Yeah, I think one of the main ones is that, you know, my clients and most people going through psychological abuse feel like they're being really reasonable, but somehow they feel like they're being made to be crazy.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, and there's just this permeating confusion and disorientation and feeling like there's this book that I recommend to most of my clients called Out of the Fog.
It's what you recommended to me, and it is fucking amazing.
It's pretty, you know, I had to pause whilst reading it because, excuse me, I was just like, it was so like revealing. I was like, whoa, you know, very triggering. I had to put it down and kind of regulate myself and then come back once I was ready. But it's called Out of the Fog for a reason, right? Because when you're being constantly gaslit by someone, and I'll say what that means in a moment for those who don't know that term, it's confusing. And like, healthy people are not deliberately confusing, but people who are trying to obscure the truth will deliberately be confusing, you know, and they might lie directly, they might lie through omission, they'll make you feel like you're crazy, you're the monster, you know. And I think it's also important to acknowledge, like, is this a unique experience? Like, do you usually feel this confused with other people? Like, you know, and I'm not saying that's a definitive, like, if you feel like you're in a situation like this, like, seek a therapist, please, who understands abuse dynamics. So don't kind of diagnose your situation from what I'm saying now, but, you know, is it just that you have something going on where you don't know how to communicate with people, or maybe you don't know how to be accountable, or is it that the person you're with is deliberately confusing you and gaslighting you so that they can get away with bad behavior and not have to be accountable? So for people who don't know the term gaslighting comes from this movie, I can't remember if it's in the 50s or 40s, but it's called Gaslight. Gaslight. And so essentially this guy, he marries this heiress, and she's very wealthy, and he convinces her that she's mentally unstable. And he does this by getting, I don't think it's deliberate, but he when he walks around the attic where all of the family wealth is, her family wealth, the gas lights on the wall, they start flickering. And she's telling him like the gas lights are flickering. He's like, no, you're imagining it.
Oh my God.
And
Yeah.
so he just starts with this subtle level of like, you're imagining it. It's not real, you know, of invalidating her reality to the point where she starts to feel like she's going crazy. And he deliberately takes her down that path so he can commit her so that he can like claim her wealth, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty sinister, but people do this all the time if they're unhealthy people or if they're just extremely immature, so that they don't have to be accountable for their own behavior. They'll be like, I didn't say that, or you're imagining it, or it didn't happen that way, or you're being too sensitive, you know,
Oh my
or you're
God.
so
Yeah.
angry all the time. Like I remember once being goaded repeatedly by the person I was with over and over and over again, being goaded, and me saying like 4 or 5 times, stop it. And then he went again, and I was like, stop doing this. And I got angry. And the response was, look what a monster you are. You're so angry. And like that is a gaslight tactic.
Yeah. So they kind of
you,
like do it and do it and do it till they get the reaction that they're wanting to prove their point.
yeah.
Like you know, you're angry, or you're too sensitive, or you know, you're making this worse.
Yeah.
Oh man, you can just see like it would be such a head fuck being in that, and very scary, because you start to doubt yourself and you start to question your own self, being like, is this actually me? Like,
yeah. Or is this real? Like people start to feel like they're losing a hold on reality.
Yeah.
You know, and if you can't trust your own assessment of reality, then you do feel like you're kind of losing your mind, because the thing that keeps us stable and able to function in the world is our sense of deep self-trust, and that's what allows us to engage with other people. So when someone removes that, it's much easier to make you dependent on them and their views. You know,
so what would be like the ways that we can, like, obviously some good examples that you had of gaslighting, but are there any like common traits of people who gaslight, or is there anything that might be like, okay, I'm seeing that as it is?
like personality traits.
Yeah, personality traits, or any like thing in their language that they use, or anything that might be like instant red flag when we're dealing with someone that they're like, oh, they're trying to gaslight. Is it kind of coming back to the feeling of being like, oh, I feel like I'm going crazy here. Is this actually me?
The feeling of I feel like I'm going crazy is like a good thing to notice. The feeling of being in the fog of being confused all the time, those are things to notice. The feeling of like something doesn't feel right, that's something to notice. But in terms of actual actions and behaviors, like it's very important, if you feel that you're being gaslit by someone, to take notes. Like write down word for word what they said to you. You know, even if you feel like you need to record, this is why victims of domestic violence record things, because they feel so confused and like, you know, gaslit.
Yeah.
that they need to know like what the reality is. So I encourage anyone who feels like this is happening, write down as best you can, do not alter anything, word for word exactly what that person said, and then word for word exactly what you did, and keep a record of it. So over time, you can see what is actually going on, you know? So
yeah,
it can be very simple things, like they might say to you, and it's important to know, like maybe someone has, like if someone has a neurological disorder, or, you know, there might be multiple reasons why someone might forget that they said something. So it's not that someone just forgot that they said something to you. It's that they're deliberately doing it as a way to confuse you, right? So if someone, for instance, what's one I can think of? Let's say you're with someone who is constantly checking their phone, and then they are always hiding their phone from you, like, don't look at it, you know? And you're like, who are you texting? And they're like, you're so jealous, you da 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 da, or, you know, you're so sensitive, or you're so suspicious, and they're putting it back on you like this. I would encourage someone just to notice like the deflection happened, and that you might not feel jealous, or you might not feel suspicious, you might just be curious, but notice like what exactly happened, right? Or if someone said, I'm doing this with this person, and then they say later, I never said that to you, you're imagining it, you know? Or if someone says something harsh to you and makes a statement like, you know, I never loved you anyway, or whatever it is, and then later said, you imagined that, I didn't even say it like that. Take notes, write down exactly what happened, because if you're feeling like you're losing your grip on reality. Like, you need to have evidence of what's actually happening, because then you'll reaffirm to yourself, like, no, I am seeing this clearly. It's this person who is the problem.
Yeah.
So behaviors of someone who is gaslighting are when they invalidate your reality. They invalidate what you're actually seeing and hearing with your own eyes. Like, as an example, I'll do spoilers. I was going to use an example from the movie, but it'll spoil the movie. So those are some things to look out for if someone's doing that, and that's my recommendation of how to start engaging with it and healing from it. And if you constantly feel like, if someone does bad things to you all the time and you constantly feel like, oh fuck, maybe that's my fault, maybe I'm the monster, like, that might be a symptom of being gaslit. You know, and it's important to reflect, like, if you hurt someone, how do you feel? Do you want to be accountable for it? Do you want to make amends? You know, maybe people listening don't feel that way, so this won't apply to them. And if you don't feel like you want to be accountable and make amends, I encourage you to grow up and like develop some empathy. But, you know, if you feel like you do something that hurts someone and you want to be accountable for it and make amends, reflect on if that person does the same thing to you. Is it always you having to be the one to apologize or make amends? Do they ever do the same? Did they actually ever change their behavior?
Do you think that's quite a trait of the feminine, to be the over apologetic, the one trying to make amends? Like, do you kind of see this more in, you know, feminine masculine relationships where the female's in this position of having to kind of like amend the relationship?
No, I'd say that there are toxic men and toxic women. I've known a lot of toxic women.
Okay,
who are not accountable for their behavior either.
I think in that book, Out of the Fog, it was good because she gave examples of men and women who were going through this, and it was really fascinating to like read the sort of energetic similarities of the situations between like a man receiving this abuse and a woman as well, which just made it be like, this isn't. I was just wondering from your perspective if there was anything that you saw, but
I think it's very clear, the statistics are very clear that women suffer physical domestic violence more so than men do. There are men who experience physical domestic violence from women if they're heterosexual, but domestic violence, which includes psychological abuse, is pretty evenly balanced. Maybe like there's more like domestic violence in general. The statistics I read recently were 40% of men, 60% of women, and but that's not limited to physical violence. In terms of physical violence, I think it's something like 90-something% of victims of physical violence, domestic violence, are women. You know, so in that way, it's very much higher that women, you know, their lives are threatened, like they can literally die. You know, and women do die because of domestic violence, but men can definitely be the victims of psychological abuse from women.
Some heavy stuff.
So
I thought we could dive into Darvo, because I remember when I read this on your Instagram, I thought, oh my God, that's such a good way of understanding it. And even I know that you've got a little response at the end. Can we go into that just for the listeners?
Sure, of course. I might actually bring it up because I can't remember what the response was that I said.
So you said, so the response was like, we both know that's not true. Like, just as a really good way to nip it in the bud.
Yes.
Because I just thought that's, you know, if you're like, no, you know, like, and you're sort of pandering to them, but if you just say we both know that's not true, stops them in their tracks.
Yeah. So DARVO is a type of gaslighting, and it stands DARVO, and D stands for deny, A stands for attack, RVO stands for reverse victim and offender. So DARVO is a classic gaslighting tactic that, you know, toxic or abusive people like to use to mentally confuse or to abuse people. And once you see the pattern, it's just laughable. It's just like, it's like, you're so silly, you're doing DARVO.
Call them out on the spot.
So yeah. So what's an example? I might actually just
get the post up.
Yeah, I'll get the post up.
If you're not following Freya on Instagram, she does the most amazing reels, so you definitely need to get on there.
I'm glad you like the reels.
They're so handy.
So an example of deny, I didn't say that, that never happened, or that wasn't what I meant, you're making it up. That's an example of deny. An example of attack. Oh, this one is classic. Your tone is really accusatory. You're not communicating in a conscious way. Anyone who's been in the new age world knows.
Oh my God.
You're not communicating properly. It's like, is the issue the wording, or is the issue the fact that you cheated on me?
Yeah. What is that?
Which is the issue here? Or another attack is you're crazy, you know. A way that someone might reverse the victim and offender. So they might say something like, now I feel bad and upset. Thanks a lot. This has ruined my day. You know, so
yeah.
childish.
Or like, I'm so stressed right now. Like, I can't handle this. Like, there's too much on my plate.
Yeah. You're making me really stressed.
Yeah.
Another thing is that's really common, because I think a lot of the crap in the coaching industry is coming out at the moment. There's one particular coach that I'm thinking of who like is a psychopath and has really hurt people. Like, you know, she's anyway, she's done some pretty damaging things to her staff and her clients, and she really likes to get on the slander bandwagon. Like, these people are slandering me.
Oh my
like,
gosh. Yeah.
It's like, it's not slander. The definition
if it's true.
If it's true, like, it's only slander or defamation if it's untrue. Like, people saying true things about you is not slander or defamation. So that's a classic way that they might, you know, reverse victim and offender. There was another post. I'm just gonna, actually, for your sake, I won't name this person.
Okay,
I can be a bit of an asshole sometimes, so I'm not gonna.
You're just like tearing them all down. Yeah.
One of the head ISTA people made a post on their Facebook, and ISTA are really big on the thing of there are no victims, right? And they conflate two things that are different. They conflate victim mentality, which is a real thing and is actually quite central to a narcissistic personality type, and victimization, which is also a very real thing. If someone is raped, they are victimized, right? But they like in ISTA to have this philosophy that there are no victims and that everyone is responsible, and that's a spiritual bypass there, and it's a misunderstanding of the original drama triangle, and it conflates two things that are different. Anyway, so there was this one post by one of the head teachers who was talking about how there are no victims, and, you know, all these people complaining about, you know, feeling abused by ISTA, and you know, but, you know, these people, it's, you know, they should really be more conscious and look at themselves, and actually, you know, this has really hurt my business and my finances. Like, oh, okay, so you're the victim even though there are no victims.
Oh my God, it's amazing. Okay. It's like, this is a rule for everyone else but not for me.
Exactly. So that's a classic Davo. It was literally like Davo.
Yeah. It's like, let me spell this out for you. DARVO.
Literally.
Yeah.
So
and that's for anyone who's listening, that's International School of Temple Arts. So that was something that you used to be a part of, yeah?
Oh, I was never a part of it.
Oh, never part. Okay. Yeah.
I was never a part of. I've been in other sex cults.
Yeah. Fun. Let's go. Let's bring it all out. Hey, air the dirty laundry.
But I mean, once you kind of are awake to how those dynamics work, it's just very easy to see it. And people like to say that ISTA isn't a cult because it doesn't have a head leader, but it is a cult. The classic cult is with a one leader, but you know, anyway. But I've had so many clients come to me who have experienced trauma or abuse within the ISTA space, which is why I've kind of had a voice about what's going on, because just so many people have come to me, and, you know, it's very severe. But in terms of what you were asking about the Davo and resisting it, no, it's all good. It's all good.
I love it.
So yeah, with Davo, like, usually if you confront someone about it, they're just going to deny it even more and make you the bad guy. So usually I would say just walk away. Just be like, boring. Like, goodbye. This is boring. This is not going anywhere. goodbye. Or you can just simply say something like you said, like, we both know that isn't true, and leave it at that. But the more that you continue to argue with them, like, they want to pull you into an emotional trap where they can make you the bad guy. So just be like, we both know that isn't true, and leave it at that. Particularly if you're parenting with someone who has these tendencies, be very careful about what you commit to any sort of text, and just leave it at that. Like, we both know that isn't true, and make effort to collate evidence of their behaviors and the things that they have said, because that will, you know, show you, like, this is the evidence of their behavior. This isn't me, you know. This is the classic thing that a lot of these people like to do, is be like, this is you projecting your trauma.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like,
take
no,
ownership of this.
It's like, no, darling.
Oh
Here
my
is
God.
the evidence.
Yeah, it's like, here's my spreadsheet of all our communications. So, like, I feel the word narcissist is thrown around a lot, like, and I know there is, like, clinically diagnosed narcissists, and then there's people with narcissistic traits. But there's something that I heard of the other day, and it's a covert narcissist. So could you dive into what maybe the differences are between a narcissist and a covert narcissist? God, say that a couple of times.
Yeah, so all of us have narcissistic traits. Personality disorders are, you know, they're thinking of them now more as like a spectrum as opposed to categorical. So it's not like, you know, people just fit into a box and some people have narcissistic traits and no one else does. Pretty much all of us have a degree of narcissistic traits. You know, we need actually some degree of those traits in order to function in this world. But the difference is when the spectrum, like, you're at the far end of the spectrum of the amount that you embody those traits. And that is when someone might be diagnosed with NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. Yeah. And so that's composed, narcissistic personality disorder, you know, someone who has ultimately at their core no real sense of self, really. They might have a perceived grandiose sense of self. They see themselves as superior to other people. They demonstrate very little empathy to other people. They are unable or unwilling to be accountable for their behavior. They feel an enormous sense of entitlement. They feel very threatened by people who do not perceive them in this godlike status that they perceive themselves. And at the core are extremely, you know, insecure.
Yeah.
Really. And that's why they need, like, to be right and to be worshipped and to be the best and to have, you know, okay. So some of these, like the being right, being the best and having lots of money and like all of that, that's at the grandiose narcissist. So what you're speaking to is like the grandiose narcissist. And then there's the covert narcissist, also known as the vulnerable narcissist. So people who are grandiose narcissists are really obvious. Like, it's pretty obvious to see them. They announce themselves like, here is my trumpet. I am the best. I am the best. I am the most magical, psychic, spiritual, whatever. You know, Trump.
I love it.
Trump.
We all know one.
We do, unfortunately.
I know.
You know, I know one who really truly thinks that he's the re-embodiment of Jesus Christ.
God bless.
Literally,
God bless. Oh man,
that's pretty grandiose, you know. And really, he thought that his mission was to save the people of Israel, and like, it's it's really intense. But so when you see a grandiose narcissist, they're very obvious. Like Donald Trump is definitely a grandiose narcissist, and they can be really fun.
Yeah. They're a hoot, life of the party.
They can be very charismatic, very entertaining.
Probably not in not fun for not being in a relationship with. Not
fun for long.
Fun
on a superficial level. Like when you don't know them, it can be fun. They can be witty and charming because they rely on like hooking people with that initial intensity, you know, and also they might engage with love bombing, where they meet someone straight away, they're like, wow, you're amazing and you're this and you're that, because they rely on like hooking someone in really quickly so that they have the control in the relationship, right? So the grandiose narcissists, they obviously think that, you know, they're going to be the savior of the world,
Mm.
or like they're the best, or, you know,
Messiah, you know,
yeah,
those
exactly.
things, little things.
Or maybe like, you know, I'm going to be a billionaire, which, you know, maybe someone has that and they're not a narcissist. But there are lots of people, like, because money is tied in with status, and status is tied in with facade and how other people perceive you.
Mm.
Money can be something that, you know, in terms of a grandiose way, and there's nothing wrong with having money or being wealthy, but I'm talking about a specific attitude to it, which is a very grandiose attitude, which makes them think that they are perceived better than, right? Because it's all about superiority and power. So that's the grandiose narcissist is very obvious. It's like, you know, the Jesus Christ, the Donald Trump, they're like, whatever, they're out there, they want to be seen. And then there's the covert narcissist, or vulnerable narcissist. So these people are actually really much more difficult to spot. And because they don't present as like, I'm the best, like they don't present like they don't necessarily have a trumpet and a like red carpet preceding them, you know.
They're like low key vibes.
They literally are. They are. And so when you first meet someone who is a covert or vulnerable narcissist, like they might actually be really attentive, and they might be really good at like listening to you and drawing out your story at the beginning. And that will be the time when they draw out all your insecurities and learn who you are, so that later on they can use it against you, you know. But it's as you get to know someone who is a more covert narcissist, like these covert narcissists can be a lot of people in new age communities. There's a lot of covert narcissism going on, because people who are covert narcissists really present as a facade of being a good person. There are kind of two. There's the person who presents as being a good person, and then there's the person who is like, they speak a lot about the kid who lives in his mum's basement and thinks that he's better than everyone, like the incels. Like that's also kind of another covert narcissist. But yeah, so while the grandiose narcissist like has their trumpet and is announcing to everyone how they're the best, the covert narcissist is more presenting themselves as the good person. Like, and they might present a facade to the community of being a really good person. You know, they might be involved in different clubs, you know, whether it's you know, they're involved in religious clubs or societies, or, you know, might be helping out with, I don't know, cancer council, you know, showing that they're really humanitarian and they're really good. But it's all there to cultivate this idea that a facade. This is the thing about NPD, is it's about facade. It's they don't actually have a sense of deep connection to a real self. It's all about how they are perceived. They need to control how they are perceived by other people. So the covert narcissist at the beginning may seem really empathetic. They may seem to really listen well. They may look like they're doing all the right things. But then when you get behind the mask, and this is with both of them, when you get behind the mask and you get to see who they really are, behind that, there's a very immature person who thinks that they're so much better than everyone else, and they're really not. And they're fragile. They're unable to genuinely self-reflect. They are unable to genuinely be accountable and change their behavior. They always need to be superior. And people are objects to be used. And once they have no more purpose, they are discarded. You know, and if someone challenges them in a way that kind of challenges that facade, then that person becomes a threat.
It's terrifying.
It really, being in a narcissistic dynamic,
or
being around someone who has one of those diagnoses or should be diagnosed, can completely shatter your own sense of self, because that person will invalidate your entire reality and will need to dominate their partner in order to feel like they are better.
And part of the tactic is wearing you down until you become the person who doesn't speak up, who doesn't know their truth, who literally is this submissive, you know, just doormat pretty much, that and they can get away with anything, really.
Well, yeah, they can. And the thing is, the thing that people don't understand is that if it was bad from the beginning, no one would stay there. So at the beginning, not always, but at the beginning of these types of relationships, often it feels exhilarating. Often it feels amazing. It might feel like the best love you've ever experienced, because this person might be putting all their focus and attention on you and doing what's called love bombing. They don't always love bomb. You know, I wasn't love bombed, you know, in my relationship, but the love bombing is a way to build up such an intense connection so that they have a sense of control over you, because they know that at some point their real self is going to come out and you're going to want to leave. Because they can't maintain that facade for too long.
And is the idea that the victim will hold on to the identity they were at the start and the person they showed up at the start and be like, well, maybe it will go back. Maybe if I'm better, maybe if I'm more, attentive or more, I show more forgiveness, that I can get that person back.
If I love them more, if I just love them more. Yeah.
There's always going to be
exactly
more.
It.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. In that book, Out of the Fog, someone who was abusive to their partner and who was diagnosed NPD was asked, why do you think your victims stay with you for so long? And he replied, hope is the last thing to die.
Oh God, that is, it just shows how, their mind works. That's wild. So
and a lot of people, and I do just want to say there that a lot of people think, people who think that people like this think like us would say, but they're not aware of what they're doing. And if they're at the lower end of the IQ scale, they might not be aware of what they're doing. But a lot of people with this diagnosis do know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that can be a really hard thing to swallow.
So do you have any tips on people who maybe if they're listening to this and like it's like light bulb, like this is someone I'm dating or someone I'm in a relationship with, any tips on how they can safely leave if that's what they feel like they need to do, and how they can heal from the trauma and the abuse?
If you feel like you're in physical danger, please be very careful. If you feel like you're in a relationship like this, I would say please seek out a therapist who understands abuse dynamics and have them help you strategize how to leave. Especially if you think that you're in danger. If you think that you're in danger, it might be good for you to go to the police as well and tell them, like, I want to leave this person and I feel that I'm in danger, and in that case, what I recommend for someone who feels that they're in danger is plan your exit. Do not tell your partner that you're leaving. For any other person who is not pathological like this, I would never recommend what I'm about to say, because it would seem very cruel. But if you feel that you are in physical danger from this person and they could hurt you, plan your exit and leave when they're not there. And don't let them know where you're going. Change your number, because this is where, when we were talking about physical violence, this is where lots of women die. You know, women who are in a relationship with this type of person are in the most danger when they're about to leave. So if you are on that end of the spectrum, please be very careful, seek as much support as you possibly can so that you can stay safe. And if you are in a relationship and you constantly feel confused and it's unusual for you to feel so disempowered and unsure of yourself and confused and foggy, and this relationship is the exception, if you've seen yourself become someone you don't like or you don't know, and that is unfamiliar, please know that you should leave. Sometimes, one of the false ideas that I had in my head was I just need to work through this. If I don't work through this will just come up in another relationship. Sometimes healing isn't about working it through with someone who you are incompatible with. Sometimes it's about making different choices in who you choose to have a relationship with. So relationships shouldn't drain the life out of you. They shouldn't make you scared. They shouldn't turn you into someone who you're not. They should feel like sometimes there is challenge and conflict, but we work through it easily. And I feel respect for my partner and they feel respect for me. And most of the time it's pretty easy. That's a healthy relationship, right? Doesn't mean it's devoid of conflict. There will be conflict, but the way in which it's dealt with is easy. If you are when you deal with conflict with your partner and and if you're the person who does this consistently, also please seek help, because it's not good for you either. But if your way of resolving conflict in the relationship is it's just cyclic and it goes on for hours and hours and hours and hours, one small conversation might last 5 hours, that's probably not a healthy dynamic. So I would recommend, it's very hard to say just leave, because the way that when people are in these relationships, they're hooked in. You know, it's like you were talking about, I can't remember exactly what it was, but when people are in these dynamics, you know, the trauma bonding that happens is such that, you know, we have the honeymoon phase, and then tension builds, and then there's explosion, and then there's calm, you know. And what happens when that is happening consistently is that all your hormones are going wild. You know, there's cortisol, adrenaline, oxytocin, you know, which is bonding. And so what happens is you become really bonded and even addicted to that relationship and that person. So it's almost like a relationship addiction, and it's very difficult to leave. So if you feel like you're in a dynamic like that, please, again, seek a therapist who understands these dynamics. Not all therapists are trained to understand those dynamics, right? So seek someone who does understand it and try and work with them to work through it. It's really important to know also that it takes women between 8 and 11 times to leave a toxic or abusive relationship before they actually leave, because it is such an addictive cycle. For Indigenous women in Australia, it's something like 22 leaving attempts before they can actually leave. So it can take some time. And just make sure that you have people around you who can actually validate what is real. Like if someone sees, like even now I have to check with people, I'm like, because the gaslighting was so much that it's like drilled into me, you know, and I keep working through it. So I might check with someone who I trust. I'm like, was I overreacting? And they're like, no, you know, or, you know, get people who can validate what is real for you, you know.
It's like the neutral ground that people can be like, okay, yes, like I agree that maybe you were too much, or no, you weren't. But if you're asking your partner, obviously, and you might get a very swayed review. I feel like we should have put a trigger warning on the start of this. I might do an intro that just says this, just because this stuff is heavy. And I think the most important thing that you said is just, if you're experiencing any of this, is just get support and get help. So maybe we can close on, I have so many more threads, but I'm like, I don't want to, we could talk for hours on this. But ways that we can call in like a healthy relationship. And maybe if you want to speak from experience, I know that you've gone from, you know, being in an emotionally abusive relationship to calling in a healthy relationship. If you have a word of advice or anything you can recommend apart from therapy.
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 Yeah. I am a massive
we will drill it into you.
Definitely therapy. But therapy, healthy friendships. I have a book.
Yes, get the book.
I have a book called Heal Toxic Relating, which you can find on my Instagram, Freya Vajra. But I talk a lot about this in the book, which is like, you know, all the different steps to this, and definitely therapy is a part of that. And building stability within your own system.
Like nervous system regulation.
And everything, like being able to build safety within your nervous system, feeling safe with yourself, building a safe life. Like if your life is in chaos, it's very hard to make clear decisions about people. So like stable housing, stable income, healthy eating, like get all the foundational things stable, you know, and then start working with the trauma of the relationships, your attachment history. You know, for people who, it's very, very difficult for people who grew up in traumatic environments to just go straight to healthy relationships, you know. And so working on your, you know, you asked me about attachment styles, working on your attachment styles and learning, really paying attention to any kind of addictive feelings you might have towards certain qualities in people. You know, when you start to have that, oh, I want some of that, like that can be a sign of maybe this person has a compatible trauma pattern with you that maybe you don't need to explore, or maybe this is love bombing. You know, becoming aware of the different red flags can help you steer clear of them, but it can also help you notice, like, oh, I'm actually really attracted to that red flag.
God damn it. I know, those bad boys, like, so good.
I know, it just tastes so good. So it's really good, like when you notice that, to be able to be like, I'm going to take that to therapy and like work through those pieces, right? So because it can be so, our traumatic relationship patterns can be very seductive.
Yeah.
And love bombing can feel really good. But when you heal those parts of you that feel so invalidated or unseen, that they're so desperate to be seen by someone unhealthy, then those patterns will no longer feel good. They'll actually feel kind of gross or disgusting or boring.
Yeah, you just see it with a different lens. I know I've spoken about this before, but I used to like have this, you know, the butterflies when you meet someone, you're like, oh my God, yes. Like, and then you just on hot and heavy. As soon as I reframed the butterflies as a warning signal from my nervous system, I was like, holy shit. I'm like, I thought these butterflies were a sign of like, this is my person, this is love.
No.
And no, it's like definitely not red flags. And then when I remember when I first started hanging out with Blake, it was like, this feels so like, boring's not the right word, but it feels so stable and secure that it feels that there doesn't feel that butterflies, but it's like the butterflies come and they're not red flag butterflies, they're green flag butterflies. But it's the watching how your nervous system shows up in dating is just probably the best thing that I started to realize, and it really changed the game for me.
Yeah. Your listeners didn't know, but I was clapping.
Oh yeah. You always do the silent golf clap. Yeah. I love it. We'll post this on YouTube so people can see the silent golf clap. I love it.
Yeah, that's so good. The limerence, you know, those butterflies are, I think that I love that you mentioned all of that, like paying attention to what your body is saying when you're around people. Like, do you go into the butterflies, which are limerence, which is actually a type of fear and anxiety? Do you notice that you start wanting to placate the other person, that you go into the fawning fear response, which is like, I'm trying to please this person, I'm desperate for their approval? Or do you just feel like, when I hear what you describe with Blake, it's like, yes, it's like the way that I interpret that is like, oh, this feels normal. Like hanging out with someone just feels like, oh, this just feels kind of good and normal to be with you. And like, I really admire you and respect you, but I don't feel like I'm obsessed with you.
That's it. It's the obsessive energy. Yeah. And the headspace that like the thoughts would take up if I'm someone who really triggered my nervous system, or activated, I should say. It was like I was constantly thinking about them and what I could do for them and all the things. And then it's like that isn't healthy. Fixating in an obsessive way isn't healthy. But, you know, I feel like we all have to kind of go there and do that to realize it's not what we want and it's not good for us.
I think for some of us, I know that I was very headstrong.
What?
People warned me about things and I was like, no, I will do it my way.
Well, that is really the 3-5 way. That is the 3-5 way. Like, oh, there's the pothole. I'm going to go and jump in it, break my leg, and then get out and then get on with life.
And not do it again.
Yeah, definitely not do it again.
Yeah.
So I've loved chatting all the things, but I want to share with everyone who's listening, how can they get in your world, your work with you? I know you do one-on-ones, you do courses.
So there are a couple of ways. I have an ebook called Heal Toxic Relating. God, that came out weird. And you can purchase that on my website, freyavajra.com, or you can go to my Instagram and buy it through the active link in my bio.
Cool.
So you can have a look at that book. That's a nice like way to kind of get into what I'm doing and to get some really good quality information and some processes and practices, and it not be a big financial commitment, you know. I do one-to-one work with people. I do brain spotting trauma therapy, which is a brain and somatic based trauma therapy. It's highly effective.
Highly recommend.
Very weird though.
No, it's good. Yeah, I remember you just like stand there with the pointer and I just stare at the screen for a while. It's good.
So it works directly with the limbic system via the eyes and the ears, and it's very unlike traditional therapy, but very effective.
Like EMDR for anyone who's listening, because I didn't know what brain spotting was, but I knew what EMDR was. So yeah. So it works with similar principles to EMDR. I find it is a little less intense on the system, though just as effective. And it's a bit more kind of flexible. EMDR is so great. Like, you know, it's just a matter of preference of what people prefer, really. So I do one-to-one sessions. I have a course called Pleasure After Trauma. So the very last live round of this, I've been running this for a number of years, and I'm going to have babies soon. So. Oh my God, so exciting.
So I'm not going to run this course live for a while.
Your next course will be Pleasure After Babies.
It might be.
Yeah.
But so Pleasure After Trauma is built specifically for people who've been through any kind of sexual violence, narcissistic or domestic abuse or spiritual abuse. And it's the only trauma-informed course that I know of its kind that is live. And so it's 3 months. It has video library, live calls, one-to-one therapy with trauma therapists, guest speakers. It's a really comprehensive kind of rehabilitation course. And people go there because they're like, I want to feel my body. I want to feel pleasure. I don't want to have pain or numbness in sex. And what they tend to get out of it is that, but they also understand why their body has responded the way that it has, which gives them a deep sense of compassion, because so many people who've been through trauma feel shame and they feel self-judgment. And being in a community of other people who've been through similar things and who are literally telling your story through their own mouth is such a validating thing. So that's an amazing course, and that's the last one is happening in March 2023, so this year. And I also have a couple of just online video courses. There's Healing the Betrayal Wound and Unthorn Yourself. You can buy all of these on my website or from my Instagram. And Healing the Betrayal Wound is about healing the betrayal wound.
Like the title says.
Yes. And Unthorn Yourself is all about the thorny fear response. So, you know, when people overstep their own boundaries and people please, and, you know, how to...
I have no idea what you're talking about. Oh, that sounds so good. Well, anyone who's listening, you have all the ways to work with Freya now. And yeah, if you have any questions specifically about working with Freya, I'm happy to share my personal experience. But yeah, just DM or email Freya. She's amazing.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really enjoyable.
So good. I could have chatted for hours, but I was like, keep to the time limit.
I know, I could feel that. I was like, we could really live. I could feel the divergence.
Oh my God. I was like, there's so many threads. We can do another episode. Who says it just have to be one? But thank you so much. And for everyone who's listening, thank you for tuning in. I hope you got some amazing gold nuggets out of this, and we'll see you on the next episode.